Humanity first learned of the NIGMA Empire's existence when a faint, structured signal was detected beyond Neptune's orbit. At first, it was a scientific curiosity, a peculiar, repeating pulse that hinted at an intelligence behind it. The world's greatest observatories, along with an international team of linguists and mathematicians, worked tirelessly to decode it. When they finally did, the message was stark and unyielding. Surrender your world, or be conquered. The Sungyo. NIGMA Empire's fleet arrived within weeks. Strange, blackened hulls, monolithic and utterly alien, drifted into view from Earth's orbit, blotting out the stars like shadows cast by some monstrous hand. Their ships weren't simply technological marvels. They radiated a presence, a gravity of purpose that made them seem more like living things than constructs. Humanity's initial attempts at communication were met with silence. It wasn't until Earth's leaders coordinated a single, unified response, a broadcast transmitted from every major ground station on the planet, that the NIGMA responded. Their reply was not words but action, a volley of energy strikes delivered with pinpoint accuracy to several satellites and a lunar relay station. The message was clear. The NIGMA Empire wasn't interested in dialogue, but Earth wasn't defenseless. In the decades prior, the world's governments, spurred on by growing fears of extraterrestrial threats, had quietly funded a vast array of orbital defense platforms, experimental drones, and next-generation aerospace fighters. Though still untested against a truly alien force, these technologies were humanity's best chance at survival. The first exchange was brief and brutal. The NIGMA's initial salvo targeted key infrastructure, aiming to cripple Earth's ability to resist. What they hadn't anticipated was how quickly humans could adapt. Earth's military leaders and engineers scrambled to reconfigure defense grids, reroute damaged communication networks, and launch experimental AI-controlled interceptor drones. Within hours, a counterattack was mounted. The humans' response was unorthodox, even chaotic by the NIGMA's standards. Fighter squadrons employed erratic flight patterns that confounded the Empire's targeting algorithms. Defense satellites fired streams of kinetic projectiles that, while primitive compared to NIGMA's energy weapons, proved devastating against their armor. On the ground, the world's brightest minds collaborated in real time, finding weak points in the NIGMA ship's shielding and exploiting them with improvised tactics. By the end of the first day, the NIGMA had lost 3 of their smaller cruisers and suffered significant damage to a larger command vessel. Earth had taken its share of blows. Several orbital stations were reduced to debris, and some cities had been evacuated due to fear of falling wreckage. But the tide hadn't turned in the NIGMA's favor as they had expected. For the first time in centuries, the NIGMA Empire's commanders found themselves in an unfamiliar position. They had encountered a species that didn't fold under pressure, one that responded to overwhelming force not with despair, but with resourcefulness and tenacity. As Earth's forces regrouped and prepared for the next phase, a global broadcast was sent, echoing the words that would later define the conflict. You have attacked us. You have been warned. Do not mess with humans. If the NIGMA thought this was mere bravado, they were mistaken. Humanity wasn't fighting to conquer or subjugate. They were fighting to survive. And, as the first chapter of this struggle drew to a close, it was clear to both sides that this would be the second wave of NIGMA attacks came swiftly, just as Earth's forces were beginning to regroup. This time, the alien fleet focused its efforts on dismantling the planet's remaining orbital defenses. Gigantic, tentacle-like energy weapons lashed out from their largest dreadnought, the Oblivion Spire, systematically targeting Earth's most advanced satellites. The NIGMA commanders believed they could break human morale by cutting off communications and rendering Earth's defensive grid useless. But humanity, as the NIGMA soon learned, had a talent for improvisation. The survivors of Earth's orbital command stations had already set a plan into motion. Using salvaged parts from wrecked satellites and a network of automated factories hidden in the lunar crust, they began producing a fleet of small, fast attack drones. These moon gnats, as the pilots called them, were barely larger than a truck, but they were agile, modular, and hard for the NIGMA's targeting systems to lock onto. What they lacked in firepower, they made up for with sheer numbers and audacity. The first strike came from a formation of these drones, weaving through the Oblivion Spire's defensive field. They carried a payload designed not to destroy, but to disable, a crude electromagnetic pulse bomb created from scavenged reactor cores. As the EMP detonated, the shields around the Oblivion Spire faltered for the first time. Human fighters and drone squadrons rushed in, peppering the massive ship with guided railgun rounds and self-replicating nanite swarms that began eating away at the hull. On the ground, the tide of the conflict was shifting as well. An international coalition of scientists, engineers, and hackers formed a decentralized resistance network. They operated out of abandoned mines, underground bunkers, and even repurposed subway systems, creating a lattice of guerrilla tech warfare. Using captured NIGMA fragments and technology from downed ships, they developed a new weapon, a device that could mimic the NIGMA's own energy frequencies and redirect them back at their attackers. The first deployment of this technology came during the Battle of Nairobi. The NIGMA had sent a squadron of atmospheric assault carriers to seize Earth's major power hubs. As the alien forces descended, ground-based resistance fighters used their new weapon to overload the carriers' shields. The result was immediate and devastating. Entire NIGMA craft were sent careening into the ground, their power cores shorting out in spectacular explosions. With the resistance gaining momentum, Earth's leaders convened in one of the last secure command centers, a former Arctic research station. They discussed intelligence gathered from intercepted NIGMA transmissions and captured wreckage. A pattern began to emerge. The NIGMA fleet relied on a centralized command network. If this network could be disrupted, the alien forces would be thrown into disarray. A daring plan was formed. A small strike team, including Earth's most skilled pilots and infiltration experts, would use cloaked shuttles to infiltrate the NIGMA fleet's command node, the Echo Mantle. Their mission was to plant a virus, a self-replicating algorithm designed to scramble the NIGMA's tactical communications and sever their fleet-wide coordination. The Resistance knew this would be a high-risk operation. Success could cripple the NIGMA's war machine, but failure would cost them some of their best operatives. As the chapter closes, the strike team departs under cover of darkness. The planet holds its breath, waiting for news of the mission. Meanwhile, humanity continues to fend off NIGMA assaults, gaining ground where they can, and demonstrating an unyielding determination to defend their home. The NIGMA, once confident in their inevitable victory, now face an opponent whose ingenuity and resolve they had grossly underestimated. As the war entered its third stage, the NIGMA Empire began to realize they had underestimated humanity's resilience. The aliens launched an all-out assault, deploying their most advanced technology and sending waves of reinforcement fleets from their core territories. Massive dreadnoughts miles long arrived in Earth's orbit, surrounded by a swarm of smaller attack ships that looked like sleek black spears darting through the darkness. Their commanders issued a chilling statement broadcast in hundreds of languages. "Your stubbornness will be your extinction." This was not merely a show of force, it was an attempt to crush humanity's will once and for all. The NIGMA Empire rained down destruction, targeting Earth's remaining military bases, production hubs, and even civilian centers. Skyscrapers crumbled under energy barrages. Entire islands disappeared beneath tidal waves caused by orbital strikes. And still, humanity refused to yield. Underground bunkers buzzed with activity as scientists and engineers worked around the clock. On the Antarctic frontier, a secret research facility was developing a breakthrough weapon, the pulse catalyst. This device, a hybrid of Earth's own cutting-edge physics and stolen NIGMA technology, was capable of emitting a signal that disrupted the energy matrices of the aliens' shields and propulsion systems. Essentially, it could turn the enemy's most sophisticated ships into floating debris. But there was a catch. The pulse catalyst needed to be activated near the NIGMA fleet's core formation to have maximum effect, meaning any deployment would be a suicide mission. While the catalyst was prepared, Earth's resistance carried out raids on NIGMA supply lines. These daring attacks, often executed by small, heavily armored assault craft, aimed to cut off the Empire's flow of energy and munitions. NIGMA stations around the asteroid belt were bombarded with kinetic strikes, and their transport fleets were ambushed at the moons of Jupiter. The NIGMA Empire, for all its technological supremacy, was not accustomed to fighting a war of attrition. Their fleets began showing signs of strain. Delays in reinforcements reduced firepower and even mutinies among their lesser vassal species. But the costs for humanity were immense. Whole cities were evacuated. Governments relocated to deep underground. Shelters and the once vibrant economies of Earth had become entirely focused on the war effort. The human resistance was united, but morale was fragile. A catastrophic defeat could shatter the tenuous unity that held the planet's defenders together. In space, the strike team that had infiltrated the Echo Mantle returned with critical intelligence. The NIGMA Empire's high command was not aboard their fleets, but located on a massive command station orbiting a distant, unnamed star, an artificial construct larger than any planet. This revelation reshaped Earth's strategy. The pulse catalyst would no longer be used merely as a defensive tool. Instead, it would be part of a final desperate gambit, a direct strike on the NIGMA command station itself. As the chapter closes, the human coalition debates the risks of this plan. If it succeeds, it might end the war in a single, devastating blow. If it fails, humanity could lose its last chance at survival. Tensions run high as the leaders weigh their options, and the people of Earth brace for what they hope will be the turning point in their The plan to end the war hinged on a long-shot strategy. Earth's remaining fleet, bolstered by the hastily completed pulse catalyst, would launch a surprise attack deep into NIGMA-controlled space. The target was the massive command station, orbiting the unnamed star, a station whose destruction could shatter the NIGMA's command structure and potentially cause their empire to collapse from within. Earth's coalition knew it was a gamble, but with their resources dwindling and the NIGMA fleet preparing for a planet-wide invasion, they had no other choice. As the strike force prepared for the mission, Earth's defenders at home mounted, a final stand against the NIGMA fleet still ravaging the planet's surface. Pilots and experimental fighters carried out daring dogfights in the upper atmosphere, while ground forces, many of them volunteers, deployed makeshift railguns and missile systems. Civilians joined the effort, building barriers, hacking into alien communication channels, and even jamming NIGMA transmissions using modified radios. It was a desperate, all-hands-on-deck effort to buy time for the strike force to reach their target. The human fleet, led by Commander Anya Drayton, emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the star system where the NIGMA command station floated. The sheer scale of the station was staggering. It spanned the length of a small planet and bristled with energy weapons, shield generators, and hangars large enough to house entire fleets. But Drayton's forces were not deterred. They pushed forward, using hit-and-run tactics to draw off NIGMA defenders while a core strike team, hidden by advanced cloaking devices, slipped past the station's outer perimeter. The pulse catalyst was carried aboard the Resolute, a heavily modified carrier bristling with scavenged NIGMA tech. As the Resolute approached the command station's central energy core, NIGMA forces finally detected the intruding humans. Alarms blared, and hundreds of enemy craft surged toward the human fleet. The battle was a chaotic whirlwind of destruction, Earth's ships dodging massive plasma beams, firing kinetic rounds into NIGMA hulls, and using improvised electromagnetic weapons to fry enemy circuits. Inside the station, the strike team raced through alien corridors, carrying the catalyst to its deployment point. The NIGMA station's interior was a maze of pulsating energy conduits, gravity-defying architecture, and alien symbols. With each passing moment, the team faced heavier resistance, automated drones, force fields, and hostile NIGMA soldiers. 2 members of the team sacrificed themselves to ensure the catalyst made it to the core. Finally, the device was activated. The pulse catalyst emitted a massive, cascading wave of energy that disrupted the station's shields, weapons, and even its artificial gravity. The resulting destabilization spread rapidly through the station's systems, causing explosions that consumed entire sections of the structure. Outside, the NIGMA fleet lost coordination. Their ships faltered, collided, or simply fled as the humans pressed the attack. In a final, desperate effort, the Resolute charged toward the station's core and unleashed its entire payload of weaponry. The NIGMA command station ruptured in a blinding burst of light. The shockwave from its destruction sent ripples through space, damaging nearby NIGMA ships and throwing their fleet into chaos. The humans barely escaped, jumping to hyperspace just as the station's remains collapsed into the star. The victory was hard-won. Many of Earth's finest were lost, and the planet itself was battered, its surface scarred by years of relentless conflict. But as the NIGMA Empire's remaining forces scattered, and their empire's once iron grip disintegrated, humanity breathed a collective sigh of relief. The words that had rung out at the beginning of the war echoed once more. Do not mess with humans. Earth had not only survived, it had demonstrated the power of ingenuity, unity, and sheer determination. The NIGMA Empire, once thought invincible, was no more. Humanity had faced extinction and triumphed, securing a future among the stars. In the months following the destruction of the NIGMA command station, the galaxy seemed eerily quiet. What was once an empire spanning countless star systems now lay fractured, its territories splintered into rogue factions and abandoned worlds. The few remaining NIGMA ships turned inward, either to defend their home planets or to flee into the uncharted void. The war was over, but for humanity, the work had only just begun. Back on Earth, the scars of conflict were visible everywhere. Great cities lay in ruins, their horizons jagged with the skeletons of once proud skyscrapers. The oceans still bore the charred wreckage of ships and fallen orbital stations. Millions were displaced, and entire nations worked to rebuild the infrastructure and communities devastated by years of relentless assaults. Relief caravans wound through the remnants of shattered highways, bringing food, medicine, and tools to the survivors. But more than the physical toll, the war had left an indelible mark on the human psyche. For decades, the world had been defined by rivalries and divisions, but in the face of extinction, humanity had unified in ways once thought impossible. Former adversaries collaborated on everything from rebuilding efforts to technological innovation. Nations pooled their remaining resources to ensure no one would face the next threat alone. A new governing body, the Terran Alliance, was formed, not as a single government but as a cooperative framework where every nation had a voice and every colony a stake in the future. Yet the victory was not without its complications. With the NIGMA Empire gone, the galaxy's balance of power had shifted dramatically. Allied alien species, Those who had resisted NIGMA's rule and quietly supported Earth's rebellion now approached humanity, offering trade and diplomatic partnerships. Some came bearing advanced technologies, while others brought warnings. As the old adage went, nature abhors a vacuum, and the absence of the NIGMA left a power void that other species and factions were eager to fill. The Terran Alliance began sending expeditions beyond Earth's borders. Their purpose wasn't conquest, it was understanding. They visited liberated planets where the remnants of NIGMA influence lingered. Automated factories still churning out drones, ancient databanks filled with alien knowledge, and entire biomes left warped by centuries of imperial engineering. Each new discovery brought with it both opportunity and peril. The galaxy's history, they realized, was filled with ancient conflicts, dormant superweapons, and long-forgotten warnings etched in ruins older than Earth's recorded history. Among the ruins of a former NIGMA stronghold, a Terran research team uncovered something remarkable. A series of sealed archives, untouched even during the war. Within these archives lay the NIGMA's historical records, detailing not just their rise and fall but their origins. Humanity learned that the NIGMA had once been a peaceful coalition of worlds, bound by a shared mission of exploration and learning. It was only after a catastrophic event, an encounter with a distant, nameless force, that their society transformed into a war-driven empire. These revelations led to profound questions. Had the NIGMA been fleeing something far worse than humanity? And if so, would that unknown danger someday come knocking at Earth's door? The story of the NIGMA War became a cornerstone of human culture. Books, films, and works of art told the tale of how humanity faced overwhelming odds and triumphed. Memorials were built to honor the fallen. Heroes like Commander Anya Drayton, who had led the final strike on the NIGMA command station, were celebrated in history texts and children's stories alike. Yet alongside the triumphs, humanity remembered the costs, the billions of lives lost, the homes destroyed, and the knowledge that survival often came at a terrible price. In time, Earth began to heal. New cities rose where old ones had fallen, blending the architectural styles of humanity's diverse cultures with insights gained from NIGMA technology. The human spirit, forged in the fires of conflict, emerged stronger. With their newfound unity, humanity was no longer just a species bound to a single world. They had become an interstellar civilization, one determined to forge alliances, protect the weak, and most importantly, prepare for whatever challenges might come next. The final chapter ended not with a declaration of peace, but with a quiet resolve. Humanity would never forget the warning they had given the NIGMA Empire.